Good evening and a warm welcome to all of you as we present the 10th annual George Washington Book Prize. For those of you whom I've not yet met, I'm Barbara Lucas and I'm the 21st Regent of the Mount Vernon Ladies Association. It's a great pleasure to be here tonight to name the winner of this very prestigious award. And this has always been one of my personal favorite events at Mount Vernon. And it also provides a wonderful opportunity to celebrate the enduring relationship between among the father of our country, Mount Vernon, and Washington College. In 1782, Washington presented a founding gift of 50 guineas to what was then the College at Chester in Maryland, along with his warm wishes for, quote, the lasting and extensive usefulness of the institution, unquote. Washington allowed the college to be named in his honor and served on its board of visitors and governors for 5 years until 1789. That was a unique commitment in Washington's life, when he was unanimously elected as the first president of the United States. That same year, he accepted an honorary degree, instantly becoming Washington College's most highly esteemed alumnus. And with all due respect to the luminaries who have been recognized since then, we assume he still holds that singular honor. As most of you know, Washington, unlike his well-known peers, was self-educated. His profound dedication to lifelong learning and unquenchable desire for knowledge continues to influence the story that Mount Vernon tells. The opening of the Fred W. Smith National Library for the study of George Washington last September began a new era of scholarship and education outreach on the estate. Much more than a superb research facility, this library is a platform that is enabling us to spread the word about Washington's life and legacy to audiences of all ages and interests everywhere in dynamic ways never possible before. Not content with our current standing as the premier source of information on all things Washington, we are well on our way to being one of the foremost international centers for education on the colonial and founding eras. In tonight's setting, it seems particularly fitting to mention our new Library Fellows program, which is attracting distinguished academics and authors and rising stars in historical research. Through this program, we intend to cultivate and inspire the next generation of scholars to focus in new and interesting ways on Washington and the founding era. Their work, we hope, will stimulate greater public understanding and appreciation for our early American heritage and the incomparable legacy of George Washington. In fact, over time, we expect our Fellows program to have a meaningful impact on the quality and quantity of scholarship rewarded by the George Washington Book Prize. Speaking of which, it's time to get down to business. We traditionally announce the winner of the prize at the start of the evening so that everyone can enjoy their dinner without being haunted by suspense. So without further ado, we will introduce this year's 3 finalists with the help of students from Washington College who will display the covers of their remarkable books. It's my pleasure to ask the following people to make the introductions. Kurt V. Brands, the president of Mount Vernon, Dr. Adam Goodhart, the director of the C.V. Starr Center for the Study of the American Experience at Washington College, and Dr. James Basker, the longtime president of the Gilder Lehrman Institute of American History. Kurt, would you please lead the way?
Thank you, Barbara. It is my great honor to present Andrew O'Shaughnessy and his work, The Men Who Lost America, British Leadership, the American Revolution, and the Fate of the Empire, as one of the finalists for this year's Washington Book Prize. The book has been received with critical acclaim on both sides of the Atlantic. Andrew tells the story of the American Revolution through the biographical lens of King George III and 9 other political and military leaders from the British side. Through his narrative, Andrew debunks the myth of a hapless and bumbling British defeat, concluding that Britain's rising debt and a waning national will were key factors in the ultimate surrender. In his conclusion, he puts forth the notion that a change in any number of exigent variables might have actually resulted in a British victory. You will all be pleased to know that he cites General Washington's leadership, however, as a deciding factor in the victory of the American cause. Thank you, Andrew. He has received already the New York Historical Society's annual American History Book Prize for this work, as well as the 2014 Fraunces Tavern Museum Book Award. Andrew Jackson O'Shaughnessy, whose name befits his dual citizenship, was born in Cheshire, England, was educated at the Bedford School and Oriel College, Oxford University. After completing his BA, MA, and his doctorate in philosophy at Oriel College, he taught at Eton College before becoming a visiting professor at Southern Methodist University. Later, he was professor of American history at the University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh, where he was the chair of the history department from 1998 until 2003, when Andrew became a professor of American history at the University of Virginia, as well as the Saunders Director of the Robert H. Smith International Center for Jefferson Studies at Monticello, positions that he holds today. Thank you, Andrew, for your valuable scholarship and for a thoroughly engaging read.
Thank you, Kurt and Barbara, for welcoming us here to this magical spot, Mount Vernon, where every time I come, it sort of feels like George and Martha are about to come sauntering around the corner there holding gin and tonics. So you can keep an eye out for that, and if you see that while I'm speaking, please start waving or something. It's my honor to introduce the second finalist for the George Washington Book Prize, the first presidential contest, 1796, and the founding of American democracy, written by Jeffrey Pasley, professor of history at the University of Missouri, and published by the University Press of Kansas. How to replace an irreplaceable man. This was the dilemma facing Americans in the autumn of 1796, as George Washington, the man for whom the presidency was invented, prepared to return to his life as a simple farmer here on his simple farm at Mount Vernon. Many people couldn't imagine their fledgling republic without him at its head. And yet only after his departure and a peaceful transfer of power would the constitutional machine set in motion by the founders complete its first full cycle, proving its capacity to endure. The election of 1796, the first true presidential campaign in American history, set the pattern in many ways for all those that would follow. It was a contest between two outsized and very different personalities, John Adams and Thomas Jefferson, replete with character attacks, backroom maneuvers, and out-of-context quotations going viral, as well as elements perhaps less familiar to us today, such as mock guillotinings. Although the candidates themselves maintained a decorous silence in the custom of the day, their supporters, shall we say, didn't. John Adams, nicknamed His Rotundity, was mocked as a pompous windbag and closet monarchist who dressed up in a bizarre vice presidential uniform of his own design. And I don't know about you, but I'd really enjoy seeing Joe Biden in that. Meanwhile, Jefferson was savaged as an effete, annoying know-it-all, an atheist, a coward, a weirdo who had invented his own swiveling office chair, and, worst of all, kind of French. All this, of course, finds echoes in our own era, even with David Axelrod and Karl Rove as our political spin doctors instead of Alexander Hamilton and Thomas Paine. But this vivid, witty, and incisive book is more than just an 18th century version of Game Change. Rather, Jeff Pasley has mapped some of the previously unknown DNA of American liberalism and conservatism, and he makes a powerful case that 1796, like 1776, was a founding year for American democracy. And now I'm pleased to introduce Jim Basker, president of the Gilder Lehrman Institute, who will tell us about the third and final nominee.
The third finalist for the 2014 George Washington Book Prize is by the distinguished historian Alan Taylor, entitled The Internal Enemy, Slavery and War in Virginia, 1772 to 1832. This harrowing, powerful book about the role of slavery in the War of 1812 comes to the Washington Prize tonight, in Wordsworth's phrase, trailing clouds of glory. For The Internal Enemy was earlier this year recognized as a finalist for the National Book Award and was awarded the 2014 Pulitzer Prize for History. Indeed, the Pulitzer was Professor Taylor's second, having also won in 1996. It is to the credit of this year's Washington Prize jury that long before those awards were known, they had spotted The Internal Enemy and chosen it as a finalist. In their report, the jury described it as a masterful narrative that tells the story of how, in the War of 1812, as the British arrived for their second armed confrontation with the Americans, thousands of enslaved blacks greeted the invaders as potential liberators. They enthusiastically met the ships when they arrived. They served as guides for British forces as they tramped through the countryside, all with the hope of freedom, which many obtained. Drawing on extensive original research in state archives and especially the private correspondence and plantation records of numerous Virginia slave owners, Alan Taylor methodically traces the little-known story of how British wartime strategy galvanized the slave population, the internal enemy, into escaping and aiding the invaders in pursuit of their own liberation, which in turn helped the British to military successes that would culminate in the sacking of Washington, D.C. and the burning of the White House. It was a pattern that had emerged during the American Revolution, with slaves escaping to join Lord Dunmore's ill-fated Ethiopian regiment, and it foreshadowed the impact of Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation 50 years later. In opening our eyes to the pivotal importance of this untold story, Professor Taylor has created what the jury called a tour de force that is also a complete delight to read.
Thank you all. And now I'm honored to invite Dr. Mitchell Reese, the president of Washington College, to join me at the podium as we introduce the winner and present, there you are, this beautiful medal. So now for that Academy Award moment. May I have the envelope, please? Thank you. Somebody's been in this envelope. Let's see. Well, we have a winner. The winner of the 2014 George Washington Book Prize is Andrew Jackson O'Shaughnessy, The Men Who Lost America. Would you like to say a few words? Thank you.
This may superficially seem like what journalists call a man bites dog story. A book about the British side of the American Revolution wins the George Washington Book Prize awarded at Mount Vernon. I'm thrilled and very grateful for this prize. I'd like to thank Washington College and the CV Star Center, Mount Vernon, and the Gilder Lehrman Institute. I'd also like to thank the senior editor at Yale University Press, who's here with his wife this evening, Chris and Nancy Rogers. They celebrated their anniversary yesterday. It was a wonderfully produced book. I won't make claims for the text, but I can say that there is no book on the American Revolution with more red-colored plates. I'd also like to thank Leslie Green Bowman and the Thomas Jefferson Foundation, who gave me time away in order to write this book. And I'd particularly like to pay tribute to my fellow finalists. Alan Taylor is an old friend and a colleague, and he's just been awarded his second Pulitzer Prize in History. This makes him I think, the only person alive, other than Bernard Bailyn at Harvard, to have achieved such an honor. Jeff Pasley has not won the Pulitzer Prize, but stay tuned, because Jeff is the youngest of all of us, and his work is the most original and some of the freshest work on the political history of the early republic. It's an honor just to be listed with Alan and Jeff. If I could press a pause button on life, this moment would be a moment that I want to savor, and I'm very grateful for this opportunity. Thank you. Thank you.